Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Peter Moylan. I'm a senior director at our client partnerships team at DIRECTV. So many familiar faces in the room, so good to see you guys. And today I get the distinct privilege to, I shouldn't even be on the stage with these three wonderful marketers, so it is a privilege to be sitting here with you guys. And what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about how we're overwhelmed with data. We have data points everywhere. How do we use that but still make a relevant connection with customers, both current and future, in a way that they become really brand loyalists? So before we dive in, we'll go down the row and meet everybody.
Hi, I'm Carley Caldas. I'm the head of marketing and creative for EOS.
Hi, Whitney Magnuson. I'm head of brand and media at Zoom.
I'm Annette Taylor. I'm vice president of commercial marketing for MilkPEP. A lot of you might know us from kind of the Got Milk 1990s Milk Mustache Celebrity campaign, but we help America's processors with messaging milk benefits.
And we were joking beforehand, for any Jets fans, there are two Dallas natives on the panel. They send their condolences.
Yeah, it's not a good time to be a Dallas fan.
All right, so we're going to jump right into it. And, you know, this is all supposed to be centered around meaningful engagement. So to kind of set the tone for the discussion, can each of you say what meaningful engagement looks like for your brand and how you kind of define that behind a traditional KPI?
Do you want me to take it?
Yeah, I can take that first. So in terms of our brand, our strategy is really to position milk as a performance beverage. And what that really means in terms of importance is that we've been on this journey, and this journey has really been leading us towards how do we reach positive sentiment for milk. And if you look at all of the metrics and all of those things, you wouldn't really have seen that tide turn amongst milk sentiment. So really kind of taking a step back and valuing things that are not always completely measurable in terms of attitudes and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think for us at Zoom, we, there's a lot of people know Zoom from the pandemic. And everyone suddenly became very, very hyper aware of Zoom all of a sudden. But the challenge for us now is that people still think of Zoom just as that pandemic era video conferencing solution. And so for us, meaningful engagement is going beyond just meetings. And what we say differentiates Zoom there is the idea that Zoom, more than anyone else in the space, is really for the people. We're the solution that focuses on the end user and their satisfaction, even if they're not the one making the buying decision at the end of the day. We think that the end user satisfaction is ultimately going to drive all the way up to the boardroom. And so when we think about measurement, it's tracking not just awareness, because thanks pandemic, but our awareness is great, but all the way into perception, and then how that perception drives down into lower funnel demand metrics.
We focus on a young consumer. We're a social first brand. And so meaningful engagement for us is really, I think, built out of what we see happening on social and the communities that we're a part of and that we're driving. So that can be UGC. We see our product loyalty come out in like the wackiest ways. We have people writing songs about our fragrances. We have a ton now of AI recommendations of launches they would like to see. We are very, very active in our social communities on commenting, but I love when it's reciprocated, so it's back and forth. So it's like, it's not just us commenting on our besties. Our besties are also commenting back. They're commenting on other things they've seen us, comment on, and we sort of create this continuous cycle of conversation. And out of that conversation, we're able to find like really, really, really interesting brand nuggets that then can become, campaigns for us.
And I guess, and we talked a little bit about this when we got a chance to catch up last week. Data can sometimes enable you to make bold decisions. Sometimes it actually prevents you from taking a risk. So would each of you be kind enough to share maybe a bold decision that you made that maybe went against the data slightly, but you felt either in your gut or for what you had seen from other campaigns you felt was really going to resonate with your customers?
You got to start with this one.
Sure. Well, if you're familiar with EOS, like I said, we focus on a young consumer, and we're definitely, I would say, we have a challenger, brand mindset in the work that we do, and a lot of the work, because it comes from our consumers, is pretty disruptive, and it's not things that a marketer or a copywriter would write in a brief, like. Several years ago, we had a shave campaign that came out of like a really, really, really passionate review of our shave cream that was called Bless Your Effing Cooch. No data point would have ever told you whether or not you should do that. But because we were so ingrained in social and we saw how resonate, like this was actually, it was a very informative tutorial that featured our shave cream, and we saw like the resonance that it had with the social community, and then we saw our business growing, and we saw an opportunity to really amplify that. And so while the data points probably would have been like, ooh, brand safety, don't do that, it was definitely the right choice. And it shifted the way that we think about what's the right message for EOS and what's EOS's tone of voice and how's the right way for us to break through with the younger consumer. So we've taken that from, to each of our categories with a lot of success.
Yeah, and Zoom for us, because we grew so rapidly, there was a lot of focus internally about product marketing and then performance marketing as kind of a counterpoint to that. And so it's really just within about the last year or so that Zoom has said, while we know, you dump some more money into SEM, you'll eventually get, more leads. We think there's a bigger story here and a bigger picture to tell. And so for us, it wasn't necessarily going against the data. It was just we didn't have the data on our side to say that brand marketing was going to be a big impactful thing for Zoom. But we found that it absolutely is, and we're leaning into that. But we did have to go and find those proof points from other brands, from analysts, to really say that. And that's led to us taking a lot more risks and kind of having that challenger mindset, because it allows us to think beyond just the B2B IT buyer and think, again, for the people and kind of how we can invite our community to be part of our marketing efforts.
I think for us, in terms of measurement, sometimes you make decisions that kind of defy the odds. For us, activations and investing in that space can be very costly. The numbers kind of show that the return maybe doesn't always measure up to other areas in your marketing mix. But for us, we've really invested in two places. So we've invested in running. We reach what we call modern families, particularly modern moms, and we've inspired them through every women's marathon to train and run for a marathon. And that's basically been a content machine throughout the course of a year. We're in year 2 of that. And if you were just to look at the event itself and kind of isolate that, you would say the dollar return is not there. But when you kind of take a step back and look at things in a complete picture, that's where that positive sentiment turn has changed for milk. People are talking so positively about milk now. And that's one example. I think for our teen audience, we've invested in gaming with the Milk Cup. So the first women's Fortnite tournament. We're focused on fueling, kind of in this mental performance space with milk, kind of leaning into those benefits. And similarly, the return on just that event itself, if you look at activations in isolation, it's really not there. But when you take a step back and you kind of build your whole year, follow influencers around this space, that's when you can kind of see the bigger picture.
And we'll go off the path just a little bit, not to make you nervous, but would you mind sharing for people maybe who aren't familiar with MilkPEP? You said it's an interesting structure into how you're actually tracking success by like gallons consumed, and it was a very interesting process, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so we have a pretty complex marketing mix model. So we are funded by America's processors. So any milk brand that you've bought at the grocery store kind of pays into this program, and we market on behalf of the community. And through that, there's a lot of responsibility, right, in terms of the returns. And so we model very in a very detailed manner the volume and gallons returned for every dollar spent. So it's very telling what's working and not working, and that's where you can kind of get into trouble, right? If you were to cut out your community building and things of that nature. Additionally, we do, like many brands, quarterly kind of awareness, attitude, tracking, things of that nature.
And it's actually a decent segue. You know, the other things we talked about was, all right, sometimes you have short-term goals, but we also have long-term brand building, and especially for each of your customers, hopefully that's a lengthy stay that they have with you. How do you balance both of those? Because sometimes they're at odds. You know, how to get a win today versus, all right, we know it's going to be a bit of a long game, but we know it's going to be worth it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a balance, right, between those two things. I think for us, it's making sure that everyone, all the way from the top to the most junior member of the team, understands what those goals are and where we're ultimately driving long term. And then when you really truly understand where we're headed, it lets you know when it's okay to take a little detour on the way to get there. So an example, just this past week, we actually we're in the middle of, you know, planning our next brand campaign and some other really large initiatives. We just wrapped our big annual user event. But last week, Alexander Cooper, the Call Her Daddy podcast, talked about how she met her spouse on a Zoom call. I see some nods out there, so we got some fans. Well, that's too big to ignore, right? And so even though we don't have, you know, direct kind of metric tied to that sort of thing, we very quickly said, all right, we're gonna shift our focus here. Within 48 hours of learning of that mention, we launched the First Meet bundle at Zoom. So you can now buy a Zoom license with a ring light and a Zoom branded candle to set the mood. And it got that in. We now have, as of this morning, it's on our social channels. We're advertising on the Unwell Network. So all of those things on their own wouldn't seem like something that necessarily are going to drive back to our overall goals for brand perception for more than just meetings, because she did ultimately meet her spouse on a meeting. But taking advantage of that customer love moment and realizing that if what we're trying to do is empower users, empower, you know, the entire office ecosystem and not just the buyer, then taking that moment to invest in that and build the community and create that brand love moment is worthwhile for the team to kind of take that detour journey on their way to something larger.
And it can be hard, right? Because that, like, the brand building is the thing that's the hardest to measure. And
absolutely.
Oftentimes, the activations that we're working on, you know, the brand might feel the effects of it years after, you know, your tenure is up on the brand. But I think, you know, when you have a vision and you know what your brand tenets are and you truly, truly understand your consumer, your users, and you feel like this is right, you should make sure that the things that are easy to measure, clicks, whatever, don't get in the way of you doing the things that will help you sort of like drive that brand love and that salience in the long term. I think it's very easy to get into the quick data points. It's like, oh yes, these are the things right now. And it's like, but is that really what's moving your business? We're a brick and mortar business. It's really hard to get first party data as a wholesaler, you know, brand that sells in like a CPG environment. And what you can get is mostly, you know, for D2C, and that just might not be the majority of your business. And so figuring out like what data to ignore, not necessarily ignore, but like don't weight it as heavily, because even though it's there, it's like very tempting to be like, oh, well, this is a better click-through rate. And we're like, yeah, we're actually just trying to get doors, you know, people through the doors into the aisle. And so figuring out that balance.
And thinking through leading indicators too, right? You can't definitively prove that something like a stunt that we just did is driving additional purchases, because there's never going to be a last touch attribution that goes through there. But what we will look at are things like, did our direct visits go up correlated to that time period? Did our brand search volume go up correlated to that time period? We have, of course, similar brand health tracking, and we'll look and kind of even maybe add some questions in about, did you hear of that? And so how we combine things that may not in and of themselves be definitive, you know, we almost always are looking for like a brand lift when we do brand media, brand lift study, so that we can at least tie that back to those lower funnel performance metrics. And that gives us the permission not to have to spend everything in lower funnel.
And then I guess another one kind of, we'll throw it on the fly. How do then you empower your teams? Because it seems like you all have a firm grasp of that. And you've obviously had careers that have allowed you to get to a point where you can balance, both long and short term. Do you find that your teams feel that empowerment? Is that something that you have to kind of foster within them?
I definitely think they do. I have some team members here. I definitely think they do. Honestly, we just have to move way too fast for people not to be empowered. We don't have time to build long decks. Oftentimes, whatever we're talking about in a meeting, if we aren't doing it right now, we don't have a resolution at the end of that meeting, it's like yesterday's news by the time the afternoon rolls around. So we need to have really passionate people. We need to have like very agile people. And we have an amazing team that really own what they're working on. And I think it's one of my favorite things in this job. And you've worked at different size companies, but it's like, hey, everything that I'm working on is real, and it's going to make it to the consumer. It's not just for a presentation for somebody 6 layers up to make in France. It's like, no, this is actually something that's going to market in 45 minutes. And every team member sort of like feels that and understands the importance, and I think feels the urgency. But it's this really like wonderful inertia that we have, like this momentum that just keeps moving us forward.
Very similar. We talk about the speed of Zoom, and when I first came to Zoom, that was the biggest change for me. Granted, I was coming from like a regulated industry, so that was a big shift, but everything at Zoom is very fast, to the point that most decisions don't actually even take place in a meeting or in an email. Almost everything happens over chat or in a Zoom doc. And that's unique, that model, but it is all geared towards speed. There's also a real culture of experimentation and the idea that it's better to ship something and fix it later than wait till it's absolutely 100% perfect. But that can be really challenging, I think, for younger team members too, that they you're coming out of college, you think, well, I've been told my whole life I have to get the A+. Well, maybe a B+ is fine, right? In certain situations, if getting the B allows you to then go and get 3 more projects launched shortly thereafter. Now, we always strive for success, and we do, of course, want our products to be wonderful for our customers. But, it's that idea of get it out the door. And to that point, I think culturally, the most important thing as a leader is celebrating the wins along the way. Telling people, hey, you did that. And they're like, well, the project isn't even done yet. Yes, but you hit a major milestone, and we're going to celebrate that as a team. So kind of having those moments to celebrate people is really critical.
I think I'm just thinking about the leadership that I have over me, and we're a small shop. We're very dependent on our agency partners, our media partners. So thank you, Paul. But in being so small, I think it does afford us a lot of ownership and the ability to really kind of make an impact. And one of the things that our leaders really instill in us is, just reminding us of our brand mission, our strategy, and using that as a really healthy check and balance. If you can position it under the strategy, then go for it.
Yeah, that's, we'll do a shameless plug for DIRECTV. That's, we always say internally, that's kind of our superpower, we feel, is our culture. Because we're obviously big enough, and I know there's a lot of partners in this room where we have coverage. I mentioned I'm on the client side, we have an agency side too, so it really allows us to serve both ends. But we're enabled to make decisions. And if we come back, we don't want to hear we've lost a deal or a wonderful partnership because we thought too much, or when you shouldn't be doing something. But if it's something in the gray area, 9 times out of 10, leadership is behind us, and that's really empowering, which is great. This is the loaded question for the panel. As consumer behavior shifts, the biggest understatement, right, you could ever say. How do you define your ideal customer? That's why I said it's loaded. I know there's 50 ways to answer that, but maybe it's behavior, how they're consuming, how they're interacting with you. I know, Carley, you mentioned, social, you're getting real-time feedback. You're seeing attitudes can switch on a dime. So again, loaded, but if you could give us some insights on what you think is an ideal customer and, how you get to rein them in.
Yeah, it's interesting for us because our ideal customer and the person that we market to and the person that we're talking to day in and day out in that like living focus group that is social media is generally not the purchaser. Usually the household purchaser for personal care items, in food, drug, and mass is a parent or a caregiver. And so if you look at the data, you're like, oh, we should be focusing on 55 plus. And you're like, actually, no, like our psychographic 16 to 24, like that is really where we need to be because they are the ones who are like, bring me to Target so that I can go and get vanilla cashmere body lotion. Or when you're there, make sure that you get that new shave oil. Like they're the ones who are actually helping to push the household decisions.
I know that firsthand.
Yes.
Very, they come for the ride when you need to run errand and
Exactly. But they're not the ones who are ultimately more often than not like swiping their card. So we definitely don't want to forget the household purchaser, but we have to hold like the end user as our North Star of who we're speaking to. And honestly, I love people who talk back to me. I don't care if you're telling me something bad. If you're pissed off, I want to know about it. We like really communicative, engagement and having that back and forth in the narrative with our consumers. And to me, it's somebody who just actually tells me what they think.
Yeah. For us, I think it's just a customer that is open with us, whether that's in the initial onboarding process, really saying, hey, this is the area of where we have a pain point or that we're trying to solve for, or an area that we're not even considering you for right now, but this is how it works over here, giving us that insight so that then we can not only help build the best solution for that customer, but also build better solutions for all of our customers. And to that end, Zoom actually has this. I was floored when I first came. There is a Zoom chat channel that everyone in the entire company, including all of the executives, are on, called Social Voice of the Customer. And literally, if you tweet something nasty at Zoom or LinkedIn, wherever, it's going to go in there. And it's really interesting that when they see that not only has someone come to address their customer support issue, but actually gone so far as, hey, we've been discussing it. Would you like to prototype it with us? Would you like to go through testing with us? That's a very different approach than a lot of our competitors in the space take, where I think there's just a feeling like, well, some churn is inevitable. To us, no churn is inevitable. And we want to be there to help solve those problems for our customers. So, letting us know before they get to a point where they're going to social media and posting something angrily, but knowing that even if they do get to that point, we're always going to be there to help them work through it.
I love that. For us, we are focused on what we call modern families, and in particular, mom. A couple things with that. With modern families and focusing on that aspect of modern, if you think about the milk category, it's billion-dollar category. We have a great budget, but it's not that big. How do we make a bigger impact? We reach those that are really influential to kind of influence others. So we're really layering on kind of some psychographic information with our targeting of mom to really reach those that can then spill over to those and influence others in their community. And then a really interesting data point to me, I work on milk, is that, what we see is when mom drinks milk herself, those in her household drink much more milk as well. And so
because they're always stealing it from mom.
Yeah, they're fighting over it. Yeah. Makeup angle, fighting over many things. All the mothers know a thing or two. But as it relates to kind of speaking to mom, we speak to mom for herself. So our campaigns have been entertaining and kind of hitting on mom for herself, as well as reaching her in another angle with mom for kid as well.
And then going back to the measurement piece of all this, our signal that you start paying more attention to recently, and why is it pertinent to your brand's future?
Yeah, I don't think we have this all figured out. I'll say that. We're on a measurement journey. I shared some earlier that I think we're looking at regularly, but what we're working on right now is now really trying to get a better sense of projection from the dollars that we put into brand marketing and how that has that halo effect on our demand marketing. So those are some kind of analysis and projections that we're running right now. I think everyone kind of knows like, oh, this is my CPL for this tactic or whatever, but that gets harder as you get away from something that has a less click attribution to it. So trying to have a model that also spits out those types of projections is what we're kind of aiming towards.
Yeah, I think for us, we have a great team. I think our SVP of kind of insights is a great partner in terms of one of the things that is really important to us, especially with kind of some of the bigger swings that we take, is cultural relevance and how is that measurement, how's that tracking over time. But also, kind of back to an earlier question, we're starting to play in our marketing mix model with like, what is that long-term measurement, and kind of experimenting with modeling that out to see the short-term and the long-term effects of just different investments.
Social sentiment is like incredibly important to us, and I think it's an easy thing to sort of like, oh, you know, it's just people talking online. But we're always looking for when there's a shift in the attitude that people have towards us online, in the comments that we're getting in the DMs, how people are commenting on our posts. You know, it can be. We launch a lot of products. Our loyalty, our consumers' loyalty is tested every single time they use one of our products, because it might have worked for them and they feel really good about it at first use. But then, you know, a few uses down the line, they've gotten bored of it. Maybe they've sat with the fragrance, they don't like it. It's like our products have to stand up, and we have to be there for when they don't. We have a body lotion that has a pump on it. And I would say it's very split of people who like the pump and people who don't like the pump. So the people who don't like the pump are very vocal about it, so much so that they're literally cutting. They say, oh, we're doing, I'm giving my body lotion a lobotomy. And they cut it in half because they can't, there's centrifugal force apparently. You can't get all the body lotion out with the way that the thickness of the formula, yada, yada, yada. And there's all these videos of them, beautiful package, just cutting it, taking scissors and cutting it open and scooping out with these spatulas. And everyone, and you know, they're like, do something about this pump. Like I just want more body lotion and I can't get it. And so we're like, okay, what can we do about this? It's a custom pump. It's tooled. We own these tools. Like it's not something that you immediately can do, but we were developing at the time a body wash that actually had a flip top cap. Turns out it also fits on our body lotion. So we sent out like 5,000. When I say we sent out, I mean like me and my team were packing out 5,000 individual flip top caps to people who's like, hey, if you want this cap to try it out, let us know and we'll send it out to you. And people were overjoyed, like they were like, this brand actually watched my video and they not only commented, but they sent me a solution to my problem. And we were very honest, like, hey, this isn't a long-term solution yet, but we want to do something to improve your experience right now. We hear you. And you just you saw our sentiment, like, you know, completely rise. It was already in a high place, but you just saw that sort of like that excitement that they had for interacting with the brand really come through in tons and tons of videos. So we're paying attention when we get it right, what people really like, but we're paying even more attention when we didn't get it right.
Yeah, so it's almost like the response makes more of an impact than the initial frustration, which is awesome. So since we've talked a lot about social, we thought it would be, and each of you have a very unique lane. If you would share with us an influencer that you think is going to be on the rise, or we should keep an eye out for as it pertains to maybe your business. Not that you work with right now, that either you would want to, or you're saying, okay, they're starting to build up a pretty good following and their voice is getting a little bit louder.
Do you want to go first?
I have one in mind. Cruz Corral. He goes by Champagne Cruz on Instagram, but you guys might know him. He's the one that like does different generations at work. When he's the millennial who wears a Snuggie. He's one of my favorites because it's just so like spot on office culture, but like also the generational element. And I think as you know, we have so many generations all working together in the office right now. It never fails to make me laugh. So he's one that comes to mind.
I think I have two sides of this. I think Milk has always worked with kind of celebrities and influencers, bigger names. We recently just did a big cultural push with Skylar Diggins. She wore a Milk puffer jacket as she kind of walked the tunnel for the playoffs. She's like a real stylistic player. But as I think of influencers, it's hard to pick just one because it's all about like the army of influencers and their scale and what they're able to kind of do collectively for your brand.
Yeah, I feel, we work with a ton of creators, and I really do love them all. But I feel like the one I'm most excited about is one I don't know yet, which is usually somebody who is just like, one of our most successful creator partnership was a 16-year-old girl who was just making a cool video in her bathroom, sharing her experience. And so I think any regular person could be like your next big creator partner.
So I have a shot.
Yes.
If I get my act together.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm really for your audience. It'll work. And then we have to ask, it's always a fun question, especially DIRECTV. We're in the content game. Our wonderful hosts at Paramount are, what's your latest streaming addiction right now?
I just started Black Rabbit.
Heard it's great.
Yeah.
I have the worst answer to this question. And by the end of the day, I'm just like dead and I want mindless TV. So I've been streaming this show on Disney Plus that's not good. I don't even think it's current or recent, called Dr. Pol Veterinary Services.
Oh my God. It's so graphic. Not a kid's show.
Yeah. If you aren't into seeing the details of farm veterinary services, would not recommend.
Yeah.
But it's just like, there's like 20 seasons of it and you can put it on and not, like the plot's kind of the same in all of them. Like he saves the animals, right? So that's, yeah. Sorry for the worst answer to the question probably on this stage all day.
I'll get worse. Guys, I got to work on my focus. I am not able to really get into shows lately. I feel like maybe it's the end of the day. But yeah, short-term focus issues.
I read more. I'm reading Fourth Wing, so that's been hello.
Literally, I was like, I don't have time to watch anything. I'm reading smutty novels.
All of the women in your life are reading spicy books instead of watching TV.
Yes.
Sorry, DIRECTV. I don't know what to tell you.
Our marketing team is here. There might be a new channel for us, the Spicy Book Channel.
You know where to reach
guest.
us, though.
Yes, you'll be the host. Well, thank you all. It's been really nice to get to know you. Appreciate you letting me share the stage with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.